Good morning, Emerson. I'm Mike Cerullo.
And I'm Adelaide Willert. Welcome to the Good Morning Emerson election special.
Now, a lot has happened since the polls closed on Tuesday night. Today, we'll be giving you an update on everything that's happened so far, as well as the results as they stand right now.
Like Mike said, a lot has happened since polls closed on Tuesday night. The Associated Press has called almost every state, with the exception of critical states Nevada, Pennsylvania, Georgia, North Carolina, and Alaska.
It looks like Nevada is currently leaning blue, while Alaska will likely go to the president. The other uncalled states remain up for grabs at this time. But remember, there's still millions of votes left to be counted before the election is finished.
And as of 8 a.m. today, electoral votes place Biden in the lead at 264 votes, with Trump following at 214 votes. Biden only needs to win one more state before he reaches 270.
Now, early Wednesday morning, President Trump declared victory, but there just isn't enough evidence to support those claims at this time. Former Vice President Joe Biden has taken a completely different tone when addressing his supporters. He's appeared confident, but not officially declared himself the winner.
As anticipated, there have been riots in major cities across the nation. These demonstrations have been heavily centered around the cities of Phoenix, Las Vegas, and Philadelphia. There have also been protests at polling and counting locations in key states. While there has not been any violence, the protests have been disruptive enough to temporarily stop ballot counting.
Now we're joined by our political correspondent, Brilee Carey. Brilee, what are your thoughts on when we can expect to see more results?
So right now, we are waiting to see results in a few key states. We're hoping to get results from Nevada later today, hopefully around noon Eastern time, which will be 9 a.m. Pacific time. We're also hoping to see those results from Georgia today. Pennsylvania could take a little longer, maybe even into next week.
And so, Brilee, with Alaska, because of the time difference, when do we anticipate getting their results, and how soon can we anticipate having final results?
So Alaska, we're hoping to see at some point today. They're about 50% counted right now, but the state traditionally leans very heavily towards Republican candidates. So we'll probably have that state called later today, even if the full election results aren't in until next week. This means that hopefully enough states will come in by later today that we could have a winner as early as tonight, maybe as late as tomorrow. We're hoping not to go into next week, but that is a possibility. It really depends on how votes turn out. So we're now more than 36 hours after the polls have closed, and there is still not a clear winner in the 2020 presidential election. As we said, Associated Press is currently reporting former Vice President Joe Biden at 264 electoral college votes, while President Donald Trump currently has 214. However, there are still those 5 key states that have not finished counting their ballots. At this point, it is still a very close race towards those necessary 270 votes to win. So what does this mean for the states of Nevada, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, and Alaska, where the votes are still being counted? Alaska leaning heavily towards the president, which would give him 3 additional votes. Georgia has anticipated finishing counting later today, and with only a 20,000 vote difference between the candidates, it's a toss-up there. North Carolina also still a very close race with only 80,000 votes between candidates. Pennsylvania started yesterday with nearly a 1 million vote lead for the president, but that's now decreased to just around 150,000 votes as mail-in ballots begin to be counted. Counting could continue in Pennsylvania through next week, since mail-in ballots that arrive before Friday but are postmarked after the election can still be counted. This leads us to the state of Nevada with 6 electoral college votes and a lead of 8,000 for Joe Biden as of yesterday. The eyes of the nation have been on Nevada as counting held steady at 75% completed for the majority of the day. Around 7 p.m. last night, election officials announced that ballot totals would not be updated until this morning, and that the state would be holding a daily press conference to update the country on their results. If Biden takes Nevada, that gives him the last 6 votes he needs to win the Electoral College. Regardless of the election results today, voters can expect to see the Supreme Court weigh in on this election. Supporters of President have been gathering outside ballot counting locations in Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, demanding that ballot counting be stopped. This came immediately after the president sued those 3 states to stop the ballot counting. The president has also called for a recount of ballots in the state of Wisconsin, where he lost by less than 20,000 votes. Lawyers for both President Trump and Vice President Biden have said they intend to thoroughly review the lawsuits and protect the rights of the American public and voters. Voters across the nation hoping that a clear winner will be decided by today. Again, we're looking at Nevada planning to release their next set of ballot results around 9 a.m. this morning, their time, noon here, which could determine who becomes the next president. Regardless, voters can expect to see a highly contested race over the next few months as ballots are finally totaled and we hit those 100% across the county and as they're recounted and cases move through the Supreme Court. We'll bring you the latest as we have it.
Thank you, Brilee. With so many heavily contested races this election, uncontested races often get forgotten. Our Boston News correspondent, Sam DeCoste, asked Massachusetts voters how they view unopposed candidates.
There are a number of uncontested races on the ballot for Massachusetts this election cycle. We spoke to a number of voters in Massachusetts about their opinions on this upcoming election.
In such a heavily contested presidential ticket this election, the uncontested races can feel out of place. But Massachusetts voter Joy Freeman says this year is no different.
A lot of people that are running are uncontested here because the general consensus of the way that people think in this state kind of seems to be Democratic.
While uncontested races may be common, how voters approach them tends to be different. Freeman says she has a long research process for contested races and ballot questions, which includes looking into the candidates' voting histories. But for uncontested races, Freeman has a different approach.
In terms of uncontested people, if the person who's running is Democratic, I'll most likely vote for them.
Another Massachusetts voter, Daniela Salazar, agrees with Freeman.
I did research for the ones that had other people also running, but not for them because I knew that my vote wouldn't change anything. I just had to fill out the little circle, and that's all I did.
Any vote postmarked and received by a state election official by November 6th will be counted. From the State House in Boston, I'm Sam DeCoste. Back to the studio.
Thanks, Sam. Massachusetts Senator Ed Markey defended his seat in the U.S. Senate Tuesday. He fended off Republican challenger Kevin O'Connor to secure another 6 years in Washington. Markey's popularity among Massachusetts Democrats has been on the rise since a contentious primary against a much younger Joseph Kennedy. The 74-year-old has been a progressive leader in the Senate and an author of the Green New Deal alongside New York City Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Markey says he plans to focus on issues important to young voters like battling racial injustice and making health care more accessible for all. Addressing supporters Monday night, Markey said he believes the American people will elect Joe Biden as their next president.
Massachusetts elected 9 Democrats to the House of Representatives. District 2 Congressman Jim McGovern was elected Tuesday for his 13th term. Other members joining the House for the 2021 to 2023 term will be Richard Neal, Lori Trahan, Jake Auchincloss, Catherine Clark, Seth Moulton, Ayanna Pressley, Stephen Lynch, and Bill Keating. Many of these elections were landslides with a few exceptions, notably with Jake Auchincloss, Seth Moulton, and Bill Keating. Democrats are currently projected to keep control of the House, but not all votes have been counted.
Now we have our Boston News correspondent Sam DeCoste for a look into question 1 on the Massachusetts ballot this year. Sam?
Right to repair is on the ballot in Massachusetts. Question 1 of the Massachusetts ballot asks voters if car manufacturers should share telematics data with auto owners.
If passed, Right to Repair would require car manufacturers to create an accessible database for vehicle owners to look at a car's mechanical telematics data. The ballot question defines mechanical data as anything used or otherwise related to the diagnosis, repair, or maintenance of a vehicle.
If it was passed, I could have whoever I know and trust to fix my car.
A yes vote on question 1 would create a shared database for the telematics accessible to automakers as well as car owners. A no vote would keep the state's current right to repair law unchanged, meaning automakers would not be obligated to provide analytical diagnostic data to consumers.
Well, right to repair to me, it's up to the customer what he wants to do. He wants to go to the dealer or he wants to go any garage. They can fix it there. Maybe with the price a little bit low from a dealer.
If question 1 passes, any car smaller than a minibus that uses telematics data would need to give access to the data on a standardized platform for car owners beginning in 2022.
In 2012, Massachusetts voted at 86% in favor of right to repair. It is the highest passing ballot initiative in Massachusetts history. You have to pay for the repairs. You bought the car. You should have all the information necessary to fix it. Without putting yourself as a gatekeeper of this information, you will be forced into the dealership Your local independent repair shops, the 40,000 jobs in the aftermarket are in jeopardy, and you'll have to pay more at the dealership.
Voters in Massachusetts will be more concerned with the presidential race and local Senate races, but question 1 on the ballot could determine the future of auto repair bills in Massachusetts. For Good Morning Emerson, I'm Sam DeCoste. Back to the studio.
Thank you for joining us this morning, Sam.
Thank you for having me. It's wonderful talking to you guys this
Now,
morning.
Sam, the right to repair passed in Massachusetts. What did the numbers look like?
So the numbers were overwhelmingly in favor of right to repair. Just before 11 p.m. Eastern time on election night, the Associated Press called the race with about 75% of the electorate voting yes on question 1. And the race was called pretty early on election night, so we knew early on that this was going to be passed.
So what happens moving forward? What does this question passing mean for Massachusetts residents?
So now Massachusetts car owners and independent car manufacturers will have access to an independent mechanics database. And so car manufacturers will have until the model year 2022 to create an accessible database with car diagnostics, mechanics. It's a big win for third-party auto shops who now have access to the same mechanics data that other shops, that big car manufacturers already had. So for Massachusetts voters, this is a big win. It guarantees that they have the right repair information they need when they go into an auto shop from now on.
All right, well, thank you so much for bringing us that update, Sam.
Now let's go to our Emerson News correspondent, Derek Delson, for more on Massachusetts ballot question 2.
Ranked choice voting is an electoral system that allows voters to rank candidates by preference instead of voting for just one candidate. It is currently question 2 on the Massachusetts state ballot for this presidential election. Under a ranked choice voting system, a candidate who earns an outright majority of first place votes automatically wins. If no candidate exceeds that threshold at first, the last place candidate is eliminated, and those voters' second choice will be counted in a new tally to determine whether any candidate has won a majority of the adjusted votes. The process is repeated until a candidate wins an outright majority. I spoke with Evan Falchuk, the chair of the Yes on 2 campaign and a former United Independent candidate for governor of Massachusetts.
Ranked choice voting is a simple upgrade to the way we vote. So there's no more spoilers, there's no more wasted votes, there's no sense as a voter that you have to pick between the lesser of two evils. It really is a broad-based movement that gives voters more power.
While Falchuk said this is an opportunity to fix our democracy, Anthony Moore argued that this system could disenfranchise less sophisticated voters.
You know, voting should be simple, it should be understandable, it should be accessible for everyone. That's the goal. So when you give people this big chore related to voting, I think you deter them from coming out to vote.
While a candidate who gets the most votes wins in a plurality voting election, a candidate wins in a ranked choice election with a majority of votes and the most broad-based support among voters. Although ranked choice voting has not been passed in Massachusetts, you may see it on ballots in the future. For Good Morning Emerson, I'm Derek Delson.
Thank you for joining us, Derek.
Thank you so much for having me. My pleasure.
So Derek, ranked choice voting did not pass in Massachusetts. Can you tell us what the vote looked like?
Yes, ranked choice voting did not pass. And while they're still counting mail-in ballots in Massachusetts, the current numbers look like they're down 55 to 45%. The Yes on 2 campaign conceded defeat Wednesday morning at 12:30 a.m.
Now, moving forward, what does this mean for Massachusetts voters? Do you think a question like this could ever return to the Massachusetts ballot?
The campaign has yet to comment, but personally, I think that the numbers were so close that there's certainly a possibility that sometime in the future this could return to a Massachusetts ballot.
Thank you so much, Derek.
Now, when we come back, our political correspondent, Brilee Carey, will sit down with Kelsey Reardon from the Emerson College Polling Society.
Don't go anywhere.
All right, coming back in 10 seconds. Ready, camera 1. Camera 1, get a wide shot of the entire thing, and in 3, 2, 1, take it. Talent cue.
Welcome back to Emerson College. Emerson trails.
Camera 4, get a shot of the players coming across the court.
10 seconds left. Emerson trails by 1 point. As
Camera 2 close on the person shooting.
Thanks, Joe. With 10 seconds left, Emerson is hoping to pull away and score this game.
Camera 1, get a close up, follow them over.
Emerson trails WPI. 10 points. 10 seconds left. Emerson trails
Camera 1, close up on number 33.
Thanks, Joe. 10 seconds left, and Emerson is going to pull away.
Follow the ball, follow the ball.
Welcome back to the Good Morning Emerson election special.
Now we have our Emerson News correspondent, Derek Delson, with a look into how Emerson students casted their votes this election.
Emerson students have been facing a fall semester unlike any other, and the 2020 election is no exception. However, despite the obstacles, students are turning out to cast in their ballots more than ever. Let's go hear some of their stories.
I absolutely voted, and I think that all Americans kind of have a civic duty.
I used an absentee ballot, so I voted here and then sent it back home to my home state of Connecticut.
Yes, I voted in this election, and I voted because your voice matters.
I voted a couple weeks back. I mailed in my ballot. I got a stamp from Walker. It was all very exciting.
Historically, young adults have voted at lower rates than older cohorts, but this election is different.
My sister voted for the first time, I voted for the first time, my cousin voted for the first time, so that's exciting.
I know my friends were trying to get my other friends to check their registration status.
You have to hope that people our age are coming out and, speaking out and doing their part.
Melissa Venable told us more about the statistics of student turnout this election.
We certainly are seeing a lot of first-time voters in this age group. They're registered because they can for the first time and vote for the presidential election. College students, is maybe no surprise, are concerned about the future and employment. So it seems that they're there and they're ready to go out and have their voice heard.
Emerson students agree that they want their voice to be heard this election.
We are the generation that's going to live with the next candidate, so I feel it is very important to get out, vote, show our support for our future.
We're, we're getting educated, we're getting out there, we have an active voice, and we have a say.
Voting is the most important thing you can do on a year-to-year basis, I think, when it comes to looking at the outcome on your country.
No matter how you chose to cast your ballot, know that you played an important role in keeping democracy alive and making your voice heard. For Good Morning Emerson, I'm Derek Delson.
Thanks, Derek. Now let's go to our entertainment correspondent, Amogh Matthews.
What do you have for us, Amogh?
Thanks, Mike and Adelaide. A bunch of celebrities got very politically involved this year. With a lot on the line, many encouraged fans to either mail in their ballot or head to the polls safely and vote. Some of the stars who endorsed the Biden-Harris ticket this year include Elizabeth Banks, Taylor Swift, Brad Pitt, Mariah Carey, Miley Cyrus, Jennifer Lawrence, Jennifer Aniston, and even Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. The list goes on and on. Even overseas, Harry Styles quoted a Joe Biden campaign video on Twitter, writing, quote, "If I could vote in America, I'd vote with kindness." Even on the other end of the spectrum, some Hollywood stars endorsed President Donald Trump. Roseanne Barr has been a vocal supporter of the president. The actress and stand-up comic posted a photo of herself wearing a Trump 2020 baseball cap with the caption, quote, "2020 vision." Another celebrity to endorse the president is UFC President Dana White. White credits Trump for helping him revitalize his mixed martial arts career and has spoken at multiple campaign events, even the RNC. Other celebrities to endorse the president include Lil Wayne, Ted Nugent, Kid Rock, and more. On October 31st, Barack Obama was seen on the campaign trail in Michigan shooting hoops. In a video tweeted by Olivia Reisner, the Biden campaign's traveling digital director, Obama can be seen shooting a 3 and making it in. He then yelled, quote, "That's what I do," lowered his vote mask and yelled again, quote, "That's what I do." Not long after, NBA star LeBron James tweeted, quote, Now you just showing out, my friend. That's what you do, huh? Okay, I see, all cash." That's all from me with entertainment stories, and now we have our What's Trending correspondent, Quinn Chao, who took a look at Election Day trends online.
Good morning, Emerson. I'm Quinn Chao, and the only thing on our minds, and I'm sure everyone else's this morning, is the 2020 election. If you look anywhere on the internet, you'll see tons of posts about Biden and Trump, but with politics weighing so heavily on all of our minds, the best coping mechanism has been humor. So today we're taking a look at the funniest posts from Gen Z about the 2020 election. So our first tweet comes from Cameron Kasky, and he said, "I think Biden and Trump are going to tie and have to do rock, paper, scissors." And I feel like this tweet is really fitting for the moment right now because nobody knows what's gonna happen, and if by some chance there was a tie and the only way to break the tie was them doing rock, paper, scissors, it feels like it would make sense. So this tweet says, when you're happy the polls are going your way, but you're terrified they're wrong. And I feel like all of us have definitely had this moment before in our lives when, you know, everyone around us is having fun and we're like trying to have fun and we're trying to vibe, but we're also like inside dying. It's like we're happy that the polls are looking good, but we have no trust in the polls, and so we're also all dying on the inside. And this one says, every day I wake up in the US and then wall punch and then crying. I feel like we can all relate to that, especially now. Here's a tweet we can all be super excited about. A study by the New York Times polled people by their name and then who they're voting for. And 60% of Karens are voting for Biden. Not every Karen is a Karen, if you know what I'm saying. It's definitely going to be a weird and hectic next couple of weeks, but thank you to everybody on the internet and all the creators who are providing us with some comedy and making us laugh at this time. I hope everybody stays safe, and we'll see you next time on What's Trending.
Thanks, Quinn. When we come back, our politics correspondent Brilee Carey will talk to the Emerson Polling Society.
Don't go anywhere.
Your roomies, your homies, your new living
best. We live here too.
Thanks.
Liz!
Action. Do you have any idea what time it is?
It's time.
7. Oh, 7? It would mean a lot to me if you guys watch.
Welcome back. I'm here with Kelsey Reardon, the president of the Emerson College Polling Society. Thank you for coming on the show today, Kelsey. So the Emerson College Polling Society recently released your final poll predictions this Sunday. Can you tell us what some of the key takeaways from your Super Sunday poll were?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. We did 14 polls over the weekend, so we were quite busy, but we got a lot of the battleground states in. And what we were seeing is that the South was very close. We had a few states tied, and it was really anyone's game there. And then in the Midwest, we were seeing a more clear pathway for Biden, which seems a little close aligned with what we've been able to see from the states that we do know. So.
And how have your predictions so far aligned with what we're now seeing in terms of ballots coming in?
Yeah, so it's interesting shaping things up right now when we still don't have a clear picture. But with Florida, we seem to have missed the mark a little bit, and the same with the main Senate races. So those are what we're kind of looking at now and seeing what we did get wrong, and it seems like we might have missed a little bit of the Hispanic vote down there, and so we're looking into, we can do polls in Spanish and see what we can do to mediate that, but for some other places it seems like we did get kind of on the mark there, so that's exciting. Like we got the main presidential race pretty close, so there was the lacking in the Senate, but we got the presidential ballot good, so.
So let's talk a little bit more about some of those key demographics, like the Latino vote that you mentioned. We're hearing a lot about both the Hispanic vote in Florida and the Black vote in areas like Detroit, Michigan, and how that may have shifted the races. What did you kind of see there in your polling?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting because we hear a lot about the Hispanic vote or the Black vote, but it's hard to gauge because they're not all the same. Like the Hispanic vote in states like Arizona and Nevada, California, even in Texas, it's a lot different than what we see down in Florida with a more Cuban population and more from Latin America. So that's a more conservative voting demographic. And so I think things like doing polls in Spanish and getting a better outreach to more accurately gauge that, which can be a more conservative demographic. But other demographics that were really key in this election were the suburban vote, which we saw consistently breaking for Biden. So that can really get him over the edge because you saw more of the rural vote going for Trump, and if he's able to get that suburban vote, that could really help him and benefit him here.
because Biden really has a lock on that urban and city vote.
So let's talk about that a little more. Pennsylvania, very split between urban, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and rural areas. What did you kind of see there in your polling? I know it's a very close race right now. People are wondering if the state may flip even. So what are you guys seeing?
Yeah, I think it was interesting. In Pennsylvania and Georgia especially, you have those key cities like Philly and Atlanta, and you're seeing that vote just go consistently to Biden, but there is a huge rural population there, and that is, Trump County. And it's just kind of seeing if you can get the vote out enough in those city and those urban populations among young people, among different minority groups, and if that can take Biden over the edge. But again, it's really a toss-up in either of those states. Like Pennsylvania, it went for Trump, but before that, it had been consistently Democrat since for the last 20 years. And then Georgia, it's been consistently Republican, but it could go to Biden this time.
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, Georgia consistently Republican, but we're only about 19,000 votes away between Trump and Biden right now. Most of those votes left in Fulton County, where Atlanta is located. What do you think we'll see out of specifically the Atlanta region, where most of those votes are left?
Yeah, I think that Atlanta could be a pretty stronghold for Biden, and if we see a good turnout there, I think it could be enough to get him over the edge. But I think it's anyone's game, and in Georgia we had Trump up, I believe, 1 point. So with that, that's all in the margin of error and anyone's game.
And lastly, we want to talk about Nevada. Associated Press reporting about 75% of the votes concluded, but has not called this race. 6 electoral votes up for grabs. Trump at 48.7% as of last night. Biden at 49.73%, only 9,000 votes between the two. Could this end up being even closer than Michigan or Wisconsin, where we were seeing a 20,000 vote margin?
Yeah, I think Nevada is a real interesting one because I think the perception on it that it was a reliable Democrat state, but when we were looking at Nevada, we saw this coming, that it was very close, and we had it, I think, Biden +2. So again, that's within the margin, and it's a close race. I think that there is the groundwork for Biden to take that state. But again, like we're seeing in so many of these states, it is close, and anything could happen. But hopefully we'll be able to get a better picture of that later today and into tomorrow.
Thank you so much for joining us, Kelsey, and thank you for tuning in to the Good Morning Emerson Election Special. We'll see you next week.